Letter from Richard Walburn to Terry L. Carter dated February 1, 1997. Dear Terry, I wanted to get back to you as soon as I could after receiving your letter with your thoughtful contribution. I don't want to lay a deluge of material on you, but I have enclosed some very interesting material on Nares, the LUE and the Aztec depository that I know will be special to you. I am so impressed with your photographs. I am spellbound. You really know what you're doing to be able to find these sites over such a large area of the United States. Thank you for the pictures. They are so special to me. An anthropologist friend of mine, Dr. Shockey, will love to see them. I am pretty certain that I read about your work in Larry Williams's THC last year. Is this true? Someday you will find an answer to who, when, and why. The LUE. I have enclosed a copy of a letter to one of my LUE partners for that recovery, which we will try to uncover this summer with our limited talent and geophysical equipment. We know where the bullion is cached within 100 feet square. My percentage will be 1/3. To get a crack at trying to solve the LUE, I had to be willing to give 2/3 of it away to possibly gain 1/3 of it for myself. I put $40,000 into the investigation and the land study over a 6-year period as I was acquiring additional Nares field knowledge. Terry, I had always wanted to work with an organized company. I will take a salary plus commission any day over 100% of a treasure site with all of the logistical problems like the Drake site and the Aztec depository site enclosed. I think you understand why now. I have 4 partners. 2 paper partners that got me in to see the property owner that has the German gold cached on his property. The top of the family heritage list is a German from the old country who obtained this land around the turn of the century. I had trespassed on this land a couple of years before the contract was agreed upon. All I had was Nares and a section of land. The rest of the data that you will read about in regard to the LUE design I learned as I was solving the LUE enigma. The LUE, without a doubt, is the most complex written code that has ever been devised to my knowledge. But this is only my opinion. Certainly no one has ever cracked the LUE except for my Nares work. The bullion amount, I'm not certain of, because the LUE doesn't specify. The Mexican fly and lie that everyone was talking about allegedly represented 16 tons of Mexican gold. We now know that the Mexicans weren't involved and this was a cover-up to shield Nazi activities in America. The real reason the gold was shipped to America was not to make money but conversely to break the back of America, which Hitler knew was the #1 reason he might lose the war. Germany lost the war not due to a lack of funds, but due to a lack of trained soldiers, equipment and resources. There are 45 bricks under the final interpreted pyramid of the sun on the LUE map. This could represent 45 tons of gold, which I feel will be about right for the Germans to be willing to take such a risk to almost double their money as well as an attempt to break the back of America. The amount will be huge. If I had engaged in this agreement with a funded, well-organized company, this gold would have come to life 6 years ago and I would have already been able to recover many large Nares caches by now. But instead, I have had to invent or use hit and miss tactics simply because I don't know what I'm doing on the recovery. This LUE discovery documents the 3rd German cache area in America. Chloride, Arizona has a mine filled with hidden doré bars that the German nationals couldn't get out of America before they were deported back to Germany during the war. On the East Coast, Hitler sent cases and cases of VW parts poured out of solid gold. These parts were painted to fool customs agents. This load of gold was cached in the New York Catskill Mountains somewhere. I've never been there to do a study yet because I've got too many other things I can't handle now. Terry, I have spent plenty of money on treasure hunting because I wanted answers. I got answers, but with the answers I got, the more questions and more problems I got too. Yet, the $250,000 investment will be small compared to the yield from just one of these sites. I do not feel that this was an, oh my gosh look what that guy spent type of thing. Without the $250,000 expense, Nares would never have been discovered. We are a better people because we now have another probe into the mysteries of life, and a tool that will give us answers in other areas as well. The Aztec Depository. Terry, I looked at your location in Orem. You're not close to the Aztec Depository, but the depository is certainly quick to get to on I-15 from your place if you are curious about looking around. I have hung on to this study for years like the Drake case, waiting for something from the heavens to get it going. This never happened, therefore I am releasing the story. The public hasn't seen this story yet as the story hasn't been printed yet. It's ironic looking back to many of these sites I have a fortune invested in that I alone can't work. Secrets are like snowflakes. If secrets can't manifest, they evaporate from the real world. Nares. I have printed copies of the correspondence with one of the men that kept asking questions about Nares. These may help you? He said he had mining experience, so I offered him a crack at California's Lost Cement mine I located in 1980. He's interested. I have enclosed the most common letters from the people that wrote in. Margaret still believes that ignorance is bliss and that gold bars march out of the ground by themselves. People just don't understand science, business, and what it takes to achieve goals. Terry, happy hunting. Sincerely, Richard Walburn, January 6, 1997. Letter from Richard Walburn to Jim. Dear Jim, in order for you to fully understand the LUE code, I am sending you a simple code first. This code was designed by Sir Francis Drake in 1579 to protect 72 tons of the Queen's silver. His code has protected the silver for over 400 years. Drake's code is as simple as apple pie when the code is viewed from the eyes of a child. The enclosed Reader's Inkwell column demonstrates how frustrated I am trying to work with the state. Finally, I said to heck with the silver. Someday I will find the proper people to handle the Drake legal logistical task of recovering that $90 million in silver. But for now it's just a good story. The LUE. The LUE will always be a classic code for many reasons. 1. The German conspirators used the very money of the country they wanted to deal with to protect their gold. This is a classic raspberry in the face of all adversity. This statement says, Yankee, if we can't spend our money in your country, then you find it. The gold sale failed, but the conspirators' security never was broken in all of these years. 2. The conspirators keenly fabricated the landing location of their contraband gold, thus keeping the real place of their cash absolutely safe and out of suspicion. 3. In order to succeed with the LUE, the seeker had to take failure in order to learn the code setup. Americans can't usually deal with failure of any kind. Then when the seeker was whistling along, the conspirators would change the rules, dumping the seeker on his butt. The conspirators knew that the FBI wouldn't have the patience to solve the code completely, because the FBI's modus operandi was to put pressure on people for information. The federal grand jury failed to find solid information to indict the conspirators. All conspirator transactions was done in cash, so that no paper trail existed at all. 4. The LUE is the only code of its kind that leaves clues on the land that the seeker can ultimately draw his own treasure map from by drawing this information on the 7.5-minute USGS map of this section. 5. In order for the seeker to succeed, he had to follow all of the instructions. For every correct clue, there were many false clues, yet appearing to be uncannily accurate. For example, sunrise peak at Old A. The church design symbolization. The sun symbol in the water tank at the headquarters. These examples irrefutably tie the LUE code design and function in with this particular landmass. There was no way the FBI was going to come to the ranch and slap people around to get the answer that they wanted. If they did solve the two coordinates from the $1 bill, this information alone would do them no good. 6. The illusion is that once the coordinates were cracked, as if by magic, the gold would unveil itself. This wasn't true. All the coordinates did was to dump the seeker at the very tip of a huge land layout that measured 6 miles on the base leg by 3 miles on the pyramid height. 7. The LUE comes in threes to keep changing the reality of the seeker and the situation. This is like changing the ruler of a home builder each day. There is no way he can build a house this way with no constant measurements. The LUE creates the same devastating effect to the treasure seeker. The land layout breaks down into 3 individual pyramids. Which pyramid is the correct pyramid, and how does one determine where the gold is within the correct pyramid after this land layout has been drawn on the topographical map? Remember, someone dug the pyramid base center out many years before I was there, because it was the most important point in the total land layout, wasn't it? I assumed at that time it was the German loyal conspirators searching for the gold that the LUE designer cached. TE alone knew the cache location, and he died 6 months after the gold was cached. TE was a German, no doubt a loyal German to the fatherland. Obviously the conspirators didn't know where within this LUE layout the gold was cached. Even though it was their gold. Isn't this a gas? Actually, the gold countdown begins at the pyramid base center. The LUE deliberately doesn't provide this cache location information anywhere, honest. 8. As in the beginning of the LUE code, the $1 bill gave us the coordinates of where to find the gold location, didn't it? Sure, well, the $1 bill is the only document that will give us the gold's exact location too. Yet, this information without the land layout is useless data. Conversely, the location within the land layout without the dollars is useless data. All pieces must fit for the puzzle to break. You may want to read this letter again when you get the LUE code that I will be sending to you sometime. The decoded information will have everything but the 2 coordinates that got me there in the first place. Since we already covered how the coordinates worked 6 years ago, I didn't see any reason to include that information now, just in case someone unauthorized reads this information. Nares helped me by pointing the land area out, rather than the megawitts required to crack the coordinates the way that the conspirators intended for seekers to do it by design. Excerpts from a letter written to Terry Carter by Richard Walburn on March 5, 1997. The LUE. Terry, the LUE is my finest work. Yes, I would like to recover the LUE this summer, but I don't know if I can. I have a small geosurveyor unit that gives me less than 200 ohms over the spot. The normal land measures 1,500 ohms. I would like a sonar or PGR scan to tell me what's there. This would make the job professional. Sure, we could come and just take a cat and dig it out to see what's there. I just stand there humming to myself, because I just don't know how to handle it. I have a personal law that has a fear of great wealth. This problem in my nature plagues me on every site that I work on, so I have tried to get others interested in the recovery. My partners just sit in the shadows with their hands extended waiting for their shares of gold to just march out of the ground by themselves. The LUE agreement is very much like the little red hen story and the apple pies. 4 years ago, I had a PGR outfit scan an area 1/2 of a mile away from the LUE cache. They told me there were tunnels under the ground. They charged $3,000 for a day's work. We brought in a cat and just about ruined the thing. Under the ground was solid flagstone. Not a tunnel in sight. I was furious about the alleged professional services available for a stiff price that is worse than worthless. I've been here working on this land about 20 times, since January 1990. I have about $40,000 invested in this project. All my funds. No one else put up anything, except the landowner always gave me a place to stay. I had to give 2/3 of the LUE away to get access, because I didn't know how to negotiate with people. This was okay, because I am stupidly hellbent for a good challenge. This challenge was too much alone and it almost broke me in numerous ways. The biggest problem was that the NAIR's energy was too strong to handle. I had to ionize small sections of land to work the charge back. This took plenty of time and money. Finally, I invented much stronger instruments that wiped out NAIR's energy. As I was doing this, I would solve another piece of the puzzle. So NAIR studies and the LUE meaning was going along at about the same speed. I cannot tell you the area of the LUE, Terry, because 5 generations of these people have lived on this land. The FBI could confiscate their land or in some way make them pay for what Germany tried to do to America. At the very least, I feel the government would confiscate the gold, which wouldn't be fair either. We don't need a kick in the ass to win, but we could use some professional assistance. I have been crying for this for many months. The LUE is my finest work and I would love to share all of it with interested people after the recovery if it occurs, but I can't do this because of all of the families here. You understand? You certainly realize how I like to tell a good story, don't you? However, I can talk very candidly about the LUE anytime, because it is so very, very well protected. I started a dialogue with Boyd Jolly in Treasure magazine years ago. He's a smart man. I don't know what happened to him. I have enclosed one very interesting article about the LUE code in the American $1 bill from Boyd Jolly. The American $1 bill is the governor of the LUE. That is, the American $1 bill gives the LUE certain restrictions, or the LUE could apply to just about any place in the world. The dollar restrictions give the LUE an exact search coordinates on the planet. Yet, I was so delighted when I first cracked the LUE coordinates 6 years ago. NAIRS had given me the land mass in question, but I didn't know what the commodity was, just like Mr. Hilton. I checked all of my treasure references, the Thomas Perry Atlas, etc. After everything was tossed out, I was staring at this strange piece of paper called the LUE that Carl von Mueller had in his Treasure Hunter's Manual number 7. I can assure you that Carl didn't know what LUE meant. He even added the 2 scribbled in T lines at the top right of the map. I guess this was done to avoid being sued by someone if they objected to his printing the drawing. People have a lot of respect for Mr. Miller, but he would always give people the BS to keep them running around in circles. Hard Rock Hammond, his partner, may have had some information, but not Dean Miller. I will try to communicate the parameters that I know about the LUE. I suspect there are far more parameters than I am aware of. If so, this LUE material will be new to me. I guess Tom Hilton's story that you submitted to me really got me going. This 1971 story gave me a starting understanding of the LUE code. I wanted to thank Tom Hilton for submitting such a wonderful story with all of the understanding that he obtained. In the story, he said that others were advising him. Whoever they were, they've never been to the LUE either. Anyway, I felt that if Tom Hilton had thrown in the towel, he was burned out with it and he didn't want any feedback from a guy like me. This Hilton example is how brilliant the LUE is, just gaze at it for a while. It uses a sextant to deliver important data. Hey, listen Terry, if it hadn't been for Tom Hilton, I never would have had any information to work on. I certainly wouldn't have known a sextant if it passed me walking down the sidewalk. So the first part of my understanding of the LUE came from Tom Hilton's article. Tom didn't know what he was looking for nor what he had discovered. This is unfortunate. It clouds one's mind. Sure, Tom Hilton was pissed off when the loot wasn't where the map said it was. This is the purpose of the LUE, pure deception. The student learns the LUE, step by step, by failing. The Germans knew that the FBI wouldn't take the time to solve some dumb LUE code. FBI tactics, I am told, was busting someone's head or confiscating their property to obtain information. This didn't work here because the FBI didn't know who to arrest, jail, or question. These people paid for services with cash so that there was no paper trail. Smart. The FBI knew they had a problem here. That's why the Gold Act was put into place and the gold devaluation in the first place, because the government knew someone would try this and they did. The Germans knew their flank was covered then, and it has protected this gold for over 60 years. The purpose of the LUE was deception. But through the deception is information carrying data like the Hilton drawing. This drawing means nothing in its format, but it does carry information the pursuer can use. The coordinates of the drawing obviously are false. The concept of arrow through the tree or palo flechado pass is false too. The data, however, is not false. My understanding didn't come by Sexton. I wonder how many methods the LUE does incorporate as avenue to a final solution. I have only solved one avenue, Terry. As I said all along, the LUE was deliberately cloaked in mystery. One story that I've heard many times and also written about by Boyd Jolly is Black Lake and buried lead pipe codes that have something to do with the LUE. Speaking of Black Lake, there are 3 Black Lakes in New Mexico and each of them are exactly 72 miles apart, forming an equilateral triangle. This, in some way, is said to be the layout where people have been said to have found caches in various places in this huge layout. So, according to these people, over this 5,184 square miles of area is key caches. You couldn't prove this by me, however, but it's nice to hear other variations of people's belief in the LUE. Don't you think this code is phenomenally brilliant so far, Terry? Now all of this is to just get the coordinates. Have we won yet? Nope, darn it. When I was first there in January 1990 at the LUE supplied coordinates, I was so excited. I thought there would be some obvious sign like bells ringing that would point out the gold. No such sign. I didn't understand this, because I had won the LUE contest, and I wanted my gold. Me stomping the ground just didn't help. All the coordinates did was to show me the place to begin the search. I didn't realize that the gold would be cached miles from this point. Would anyone jerk someone around and lead them to a point where the gold wasn't to be found? Yep, Hitler would. The Germans were pissed because their smuggled gold was useless to them and useless to kill the American money market too. Thus, the purpose of the designed LUE was screw with the minds of the FBI. The Germans knew where their gold was cached. They didn't need a code. But to farther create pain to the FBI, a code was created. As I toured the land, with permission now, I observed certain symbols such as the enclosed sun symbol deliberately constructed in a water-holding tank. And the pictured Great Seal, which is a natural landmark. I knew I was on the right land in more than one way, but I also knew they were playing with my mind too. I knew what to expect with the second LUE. If you will look at your LUE code, you will see that the staircase only goes down to the halfway point on the arrow shaft. On this halfway point you see the smaller pyramid with the dollar shadow on it. We are, once again, learning by failing. The Great Seal photo marks the far right side of this small pyramid. This is what I call the second pyramid of the monuments. There will be monuments all the way along deliberately placed, so that you can draw this expression on a topographical map. Isn't this a gas? The Germans are having us draw our own treasure map. Have you ever heard such a thing in codes before? I certainly haven't. This is why the LUE is so brilliant. The LUE really doesn't give much data. The searcher provides the data that step by step paints a picture. The loyal German here was a surveyor by trade. He did the surveying. Now, let's back up for a minute and look at what they're doing to us again. The Germans are using 3 pyramids in a huge layout on the land to have us observe this layout by the measured foot. Now they're having us draw this information on a topographical map. Why? Because this is our treasure map where the gold will be found in this land layout. The area of the second inter-pyramid is about 6 miles on the base leg by 1.5 miles in height. Somewhere within this area is the gold. If you flip this expression down, it forms a square. The land also provides permanently installed in stone the location coordinates, as if we didn't know them to get there. Another German ha ha. Now it is obvious that the pyramid base center is the most important place in this large layout, doesn't it? Sure it does, because everything in the world is measured from this point, as far as the LUE code is concerned. Well, certainly someone thought so, because the area of the pyramid base center of the second inner pyramid has dig holes all over it. Someone in years gone by knew of this layout and came here to dig it up. Who do you think it was? I suspect the Germans did this, because the loyal German here died 6 months after the gold was cached here. Obviously, no one knew where the gold was cached because the dead man was the one that designed this marvelous, intriguing, and gut-wrenching code to protect German interests. The Germans took a shot at the pyramid base center and lost. The gold wasn't there. Yet, this was okay, because the Germans figured it was better for the gold to be lost than to have had the Americans possibly confiscate the gold being removed from America, thus strengthening the American defenses. Terry, that's all that I really know about the LUE in generalities. There is plenty of data that I had to leave out to protect the site. In regard to the final answer to the cached gold, we must return to the Supreme Governor of the LUE, because the LUE simply doesn't give us this information absolutely for certain. The LUE provides us with plenty of possible clues in this 9 square miles area, but no cigar. For the answer to where many tons of gold is buried, comes from the supreme authority, the American $1 bill, doesn't it? Sure it does. Terry, I will let you tell me where all of the gold is buried, since you asked about the LUE code. Will you do that? Okay, good. Take a $1 bill out of your wallet and hold it up to the light by the black side first. The dollar contains a key, so you must use this key. The $1 key is located in the green area of the black side of the $1 bill, about 3 inches to the right of George's nose. Hold your dollar key up to a very bright light now. What do you see? That's right, Terry, the key magically bleeds through the dollar on the other side, and the key is laying on the left leg of the second inter-pyramid of the monuments. This means, of course, that gold is buried under the left leg of the second pyramid of the monument's layout, doesn't it? This also means that all Americans have had the secret of millions of dollars in their wallets for over 60 years. Isn't that a hoot? Without nares, this secret could have been lost forever. Did you like the LUE in generalities? It is the most complex challenge I have ever had. You asked me what gave me the idea that the LUE was from Germany. Actually, the enclosed letter from a nice old fellow in Canada that wrote me from the THC gave me the German clue. His letter came to me about the time I was starting on the LUE. The biggest breakthrough came when no Spanish evidence at all came to the surface. The FBI had problems with this point too, obviously. When I saw the great-great-grandfather's grave with the dates on it, I knew this cache was a German cache. Everything fell into place like a fine-fitting shoe. No loose ends. I just don't know how much gold is there. Not the faintest idea. At least 16 tons, because this is the fabricated amount of the Germans' fabricated Mexican contraband case to protect their efforts. I do not think Germany would get involved for 16 tons of gold. I think they would go for the deal for probably 50 to 100 tons of gold. This is just my feeling. If anyone can count the bricks in the Great Seal, this may be the tonnage weight of the cached gold. I can't see that well to do this. This could be a blind alley too. But everything will be known after a recovery is done. Terry, everyone knows I'm quite mad. I can't even get a professional treasure recovery outfit to work with me on any of these nice sites. No one of sane mind gives away $90 million in a magazine. I tried working with Norman Scott of Global Explorations. He said dumping the gold is at Shiprock. I guess they're all rolling in dough. What do you think? But, it's always fun to talk shop, isn't it? Terry, thank you for sharing with me. You didn't ask for all of this stuff, but I thought you would enjoy the incredible LUE. Wouldn't this make a great movie? This true story beats The Last Crusade with Sean Connery and Harrison Ford. But I'm afraid it must die a natural death as it has for the last 60 years to protect innocent people. Sincerely, Richard Walburn. Letter from Richard Walburn to Terry L. Carter dated December 16, 1996. Dear Terry, hello and welcome to the treasure hunting fraternity, the strangest business in the world. There's nothing like it anywhere. Where gold bars simply march out of the ground by themselves to the tune of an MFD without ever losing a step in their cadence. Yes, Terry, treasure hunting is like Fantasia, where all dreams can come true and all things are possible but never are. This is a carnal pun, of course, and it leads to my largest headache. In any business in the world it takes money to make money, but not treasure hunting. Just a whistle on the lips and a dream in the heart, plus a brand new shovel are the only requirements to instant wealth. This is the stigma that abounds us as we try to promote possible profits in a business-like manner. I'm glad that you enjoyed Sir Francis Drake. The rascal did okay for himself. I'll have over 20 massive treasure sites that I will be giving to the magazines over a period of time. That is if I can't be a part of a well-organized recovery company. Secrets are useless to me if they can't be recovered. If I don't have the clout to accomplish the job, then I will pass the ball to someone else to noodle with, just like I did with Sir Francis Drake. I am grateful that treasure seekers would print the Sir Francis Drake enigma. History is updated now and the truth of Drake can be witnessed by anyone that knows where the article can be found. Terry, you know where I come from, because our paths are uncannily very similar. I was an inventor, and industry stole all of my patents. I have been bowled over by just about everything at one time or another. Consequently, most of my work is a secret now, not out of desire, but rather because of the disgusting table manners of others. I have studied about one half of the United States with NARES. I have over 20 massive NARES treasure sites that need recovering from the Pacific states through Texas. I discovered NARES and I'll design the equipment used in the study of NARES. There isn't anything published on it, because I haven't really released anything on NARES. You can appreciate why. Equipment salespeople use some of what I have said about NARES as some promotion equipment jargon to entice innocent treasure hunters to spend their hard-earned dollars on these foolish treasure hunting toys. I cry for these victims. And if I had my way, I would love to be Rambo for a day, believe me, but unfortunately the stigma get rich quick follows us everywhere, and we are regarded as grapes ripe for the picking. We are considered liars, con men and fools just about wherever we go. But the field of treasure hunting is a type of science, and I have devoted $250,000 in the study of NARES and historical research over the last 25 years. I believe in it, I love the field, and hopefully before I am dead I will team up with people that can handle site logistics and recover treasure. I am a treasure hunter, not a treasure recoverer. There is a big difference between the posture of both specialties, and all it takes is one's pants full of buckshot to tell what needs to be done, and what one's limitations are. I am a front-end man. That's all I'm good for. I never meet well with strangers, which is no plus for me. I usually never ask for permission, because I can't handle no for an answer, and my NARES preliminary study is usually over before the owner could say yes. Besides, morally speaking, my interests are usually hundreds of years before they were born. If permission was easily available, of course I would tend to ask for it. I need to be hired by a company that can get results. By results, what do I mean? The cache at Santa Cruz is 45 feet deep on state park land. Death to anyone that digs a hole here, says the state. The treasure at Nikani, Oregon is 50 feet deep at the ocean tide line in a natural refuge area. Don't ask me how they put it down there in the olden days. But, apparently the same method was used at the famous Oak Island site. Many of my NARES sites are Spanish vaults that are very deep. The Spanish never made it easy for anyone, and neither did the Nazis. There are two Nazi huge caches in this half of the United States. One depository is in Arizona and the other one is in New Mexico. The one in New Mexico is protected by the LUE code and closed. It was a real test for NARES studies. The FBI has had this code for the last 60 years. It was released to the general public in 1940 in an effort to have a brilliant private citizen to clue the FBI in on the location of the gold bars. It is called the Mexican Gold Contraband of 1934. This, of course, is pure fiction. This is a German cache. The Germans hoped to have the failing American economy pay for their World War II effort. This didn't happen, fortunately, because of the Gold Act, which was wisely placed in the Gold Amendment. Terry. Much of my NARES studies and equipment came from the LUE project. I met some people that got me on the land, and an agreement was signed without a dime to accomplish the recovery. I've put $40,000 into this project, and 1/3 of the profits are mine. This cash should finally come in next year. I never wanted to do this alone, but no one showed up to share in the challenge. A lot like life, right? Here is what the Germans did, which I'm certain you will enjoy reading. They paid for all American services by cash, so that no paper trail followed them. They knew that the FBI wanted modus operandi, so they gave the FBI a trunk full of phony modus operandi that still has them stuck in shiprock today, along with a host of other treasure hunters. I love what Terry, and treasure hunting is full of it. The LUE is an exact way bill to the German gold. But the coordinates given by the American $1 bill put you in an area where no gold will be found. However, what will be found at the coordinates is a giant land layout by monuments. When this large land layout is plotted on a topographical map, this becomes the treasure hunter's treasure map. Amazing, isn't it? This two-dimensional layout is 1.5 miles high by 2.5 miles wide along the base leg. The key is 3 inches to the right of George Washington's nose on the $1 bill. This is the key to the land layout and where exactly the bullion lies today. Drake's code is kindergarten code material compared to the LUE code twister. The LUE was designed deliberately as a foiler, but within the code's deterrence is the truth too. Why was the LUE made? It was made as a pun to the FBI carrying this message: Yankee, if we can't spend our money in your country, then you find it. The Germans were mad and their efforts were foiled. The Germans knew that the LUE was a mistake, but they felt that they simply must jerk the tail of the dog that had plagued them with so much pain over the smuggled bullion. The forefather of 5 generations of these people was a German planted in America just after the First World War to assist the old country on demand. The bullion wasn't taken out of the US because the Germans felt that if the Americans confiscated the bullion it would make them stronger. Hitler wouldn't live with that possibility. Besides, the German that lived here that made the unsolvable encoded LUE died 6 months after the bullion was cashed, and Germany didn't know where that point was, nor how to crack the LUE code. Terry. How do I know all of this rambling? Because Nares gave me the land mass that rejected the presence of gold. This allowed me to crack the LUE code coordinates in 6 weeks, like in the Drake silver bullion case. The rest of the information came by studying the land with Nares, plus family interviews. What I do is like gathering evidence from deceased people. There are usually no living testimonies. Terry. It's thrilling work, but damn hard to manifest. This is why I choose to be the front-end man. I've got the whole world to study and to update historically. This is what I want to do if I can be teamed up with the right company that can afford a world study as well as the logistics of many recoveries. The profits could approach what Bill Gates makes, but solid gold instead. If you have a company in mind that is really interested in artifacts, please let me know of them. Terry, you have a good wife. My wife has stayed with me for over 30 years when each day through my failure I felt she would leave. The road is tough for families and good relationships. One is pulled between pure adventure and human fulfillment. I do know that the only way to win at anything is to hang in there, to become as skilled as you can become with all of the earth elements against you and a few conmen to boot. Nares, what is it? How do you recognize it and how do you use it to your advantage? Terry, I remember years ago when I purchased an Anderson mineral L rod to find gold. To help with my Stanford tuition. I never found any gold and I had to drop out of Stanford. I am not mad at Anderson nor my decision, but this was the tale of the vendetta that I was to bear for another 20 years. My vendetta was, why won't mineral rods and MFDs work in the field as well as they operate on test plots? The end of this voyage would be the birth of Nares and a brand new way of treasure hunting, that wasn't IR, radar, side-scan sonar or some satellite technology. I remember asking Anderson why the rod would take me to one location and when I dug a hole nothing was in it. Anderson would say, "Oh, that is a ghost treasure, someone else dug it up before you got there." I asked him, how come the same guy was always there before I got there regardless of where I am? Anderson never responded to that question. Terry, if you never learn anything more about what I cover, learn this: if people are testing alleged scientific instruments and equipment on test plots, then selling them to treasure hunters, keep your money in your jeans and walk away. Why? Because these people haven't the slightest idea what is going on in the ground nor in the field. Why is this? Why will a device work wonderfully in a test facility and not in the field? Here is why: magnetism. I will expand on this later. Nares is a spin-off of the medical field. Terry, I will give you an example that should open your mind to ponder. You know for a fact that many people die because of an organ transplants. Do you know why? It has to do with body balance, doesn't it? Sure it does. We are living things and we must function under natural laws even if we don't understand them. The first natural law is balance. Death will balance out the equation if the new organ cannot be made compatible with the body environment. To nature, death is an option. To us, death is never an option. Nature's second law is renewing. You have seen a forest burn down for fresh carbon so that new trees can grow. A stupid law which no one will deny, but nevertheless a law that we cannot alter in life. Terry, this is not the Twilight Zone, this will make sense to you as we go along. I'm talking about Nares fundamentals here. I know it is difficult to hang in here. People are waiting for an instant treasure finder. There isn't one and there never will be one because of Nares, as you will learn. A patient organ transplant is a deliberate implant into a normally balanced environment. A cache, similarly, is a deliberate implant into a normally balanced environment. Both of these situations have the same laws applied to them, don't they? This is true because both cases deal with the balance of nature. Our planet is a living organism, so the law of balance applies, doesn't it? Why is this analogy so important? We are dealing with nature rather than science, aren't we? Once we begin to see this relationship, we will not rely on instruments that don't work for us in the field. Our field instruments will be inexpensive and affordable. To expand on this idea, science was created by men to fulfill man's needs. Nature doesn't acknowledge nor utilize man's concept of science and how the world should work. In fact, science usually doesn't apply to nature at all. Science pathetically tries to explain nature. Isn't this ridiculous? Nature did fine long before man was created, didn't it? This concept is important to understand the next time you purchase a piece of equipment that is supposed to find gold. Remember that this poor piece of equipment is being asked to operate in a very strong saturated magnetic field. Most equipment won't do this, But the manufacturers don't realize that this is the conditions that their equipment must operate within. Of course, equipment fails in the field. This is why magnetism. All of these field devices crash and burn embarrassingly on a real treasure site but never in the laboratory. In order to find cached gold in the ground, you have to use natural procedures to do this. A doctor wouldn't use a metal detector to find your liver, would he? Of course not. After all, nature is running the show here, not science. You have seen at least one remarkable example of Nares, Drake's site studies. You see how remarkable all of the data is, even though the event happened 400 years ago. Why is this possible? What has died or has been lost within man is not lost within nature. Terry, this is the opening premise to Nares. This is something that you will have to let go in your mind to continue, or you will never learn Nares. Nares, the secret natural study of finding valuable artifacts and civilizations where none is known to exist. Nares will be your worst enemy or your best ally to finding treasure. Whatever that is to you will always be present on any cached treasure site. This is one of life's few guarantees. When I scan a section of land, 10,000 square miles, I scan for what landmass will not accept gold, silver and gems. In other words, I am seeking what landmass hates these commodities. Why would I do this? Let's say that a prospector mined 20 pounds of gold nuggets along the American River in Northern California. Is there a problem here? No, because the nuggets are natural and natural to the environment where they were found. There will be no natural rejection here. But, the miner has brought these 20 pounds of nuggets back to his home in San Francisco. He caches these nuggets in his backyard. Is there a problem now? You bet. The nuggets are not a balanced product of the San Francisco environment, therefore nature will reject this gold with a fury. Years later the prospector dies. Will anyone find the nuggets? Yes, if they know about Nares. Nature never forgets and nature protects what she rejects, which is another dumb law that we have to deal with. Nature doesn't want us messing with her implants. We use a special procedure to study the natural process of rejecting elements. It is called test station gridding or puzzle piece gridding, more about this later. What has happened to these gold nuggets? Nature tries to reject these nuggets with at least 10 times the power and at the same frequency as the implanted element to make it compatible with the foreign environment that the nuggets are cached within. Nature provides a barrier of magnetics to protect this implant. This Nares situation has been created deliberately by man. This is environmental pollution, isn't it? You bet it is. Nares is really about how to handle a specific kind of human environmental pollution control. Does the government know about this condition? Yes, they do. The government calls it radio trash. I, on the other hand, call it radio treasure. An MFD salesman gave me his $3,500 Omitron and said find out why it doesn't work in the field and get back to me. This man was wise to the problem after some of his customers broke his nose for selling them a lemon. Let's use some logic here. If it is true that the Nares system uses 10 times the power to make a rejected element compatible, then you could say with safety that the last thing you will dig up on your treasure site is the treasure, isn't it? That's absolutely correct, and anyone with any field experience has certainly dug plenty of false holes. Now you know why. This also means that you have to assume that all hot spots are charged magnetite and not your treasure within this environment. Your treasure is like a lit candle at high noon, and the sun is the Nares rejection energy of the candle. You will also notice that if you go around a hot spot with copper rods that you will get 8 rod crosses. Verify this yourself. There are 4 grids coming and going from the center of the hot spot. These grids are 1. North-south grid 360 by 180 degrees, 2. East-west grid 90 by 270 degrees, 3. Identity grid is 45 degrees by 225 degrees, and 4. Integrity grid 135 degrees by 315 degrees. These are the dominant 4 grids of your lost cache. Luckily for us in the field hotspots, places that draw our rods or MFDs, will appear only 1 grid at a time. As you move along discharging these hotspots with a metal detector, geosurveyor or a blast of 110 volts AC through ground stakes, you will likely see these hotspots jump to one of the other 3 grids. The name of the treasure hunting game is to keep the charge moving. Where the charge stops is a visual contact with the Nares flower or grid system layout that you are seek to find. Sometimes, it is necessary to hit the hotspot with a hand pick to disturb the soil to move it along. Always flag these hotspot positions because this is the flower pattern. A flower is another word for a Nares 4 grid system, and this information is what is going to show you this invisible non-5 sensual Nares pattern created from your treasure being buried in the wrong environment. If it wasn't for Nares, much treasure would be lost to treasure hunters without a way bill. Drawing this pattern on your hand-drawn treasure site map will ultimately show you where the treasure is. After every other piece of equipment has failed to do this for you within this environment. These hot spots recorded on your hand-drawn treasure site map. This map is the center of the Nares flower and is the riches you seek that blinded you before. If you fail to see the Nares flower pattern, no problem. Just continue discharging the hot spots until the charge will not move anymore despite all that you try to do to move the charge. You will have to dig it out. The chances are good that this is what you're looking for even without your hand-drawn treasure map. Bear in mind that these grids travel over 200 miles from the source, and if one isn't certain where the cache is located, 40 miles from the source is frequently the strongest energy where you may find dowsers whistling along digging holes. Ignore this, because this is just the energy at the Nares system's wavelength, test station gridding or puzzle piece gridding. To find a massive treasure, which may or may not be historically known, I usually grid off 100 miles in diameter. I drive this area by the roads that the state provides for cars. I create a test station every 15 to 20 miles along this huge square area that I have created. Make your test station a rest area or a highway intersection that you can reference on a 20 miles per inch state map. Stop at each test station and conduct a 360-degree mineral rod sweep or MFD stakeless rod sweep. Make this MFD sweep rod yourself or purchase one if they are available if you're using an MFD for your test station Nares grid reader device. I use a universal antenna Anderson mineral rod, about $500, or an MFD stakeless about $300, but any mineral rod or MFD will do. Bend your mineral rod or your MFD sweep rod up 30 degrees so that distant hot spots are readable in the stratosphere. As you slowly sweep your rod and log down on paper the compass heading of any rod locks or stall places. With a plastic drawing protractor exaggerate the logged compass angled line from this test area in both directions drawn on your 20 miles per inch state map. As you do this along your 10,000 or 20,000 square miles land study from test station to test station, you will notice some of your test lines from various test stations will lock onto one spot within 20 miles or so. These are Nares hot spots, charged magnetite. These spots bear visual witness of the Nares system that you seek to locate. After you have completed your test station land study, you must determine where the Nares source is within these hot spots. Usually the source is not readable and must be interpreted by the flower pattern that you have drawn by your test stations. There is one spot within that section that all of the spots will line up on with 4 grids or 8 lines from one central point. This is like rings from a circle created by a pebble being tossed in the water. But with Nares this point must be determined. You will gain more understanding of this as you work with it. Do not be concerned if there is more than one cache within this test area, because the largest cache will always be dominant and drown out other Nares systems in your study area. Treasure hunters want the big ones, so nature provides this automatically for you. This gives you a cat's eye insight of what Nares is and how you can use this existing energy to your advantage. Another nice thing about Nares is that the treasure will be found by where nature says it will be found, rather than believing in some treasure book reference. You will notice that finding treasure doesn't require thousands of dollars in invested equipment. You can afford a mineral rod, a pocket compass and a car. One of your largest expenses will be gasoline and your time. When you have found your treasure, all of the logistical problems will come to you that I have had to contend with over the years. Hopefully your site will be workable. I suggest that you consider purchasing a GeoSurveyor ground resistance measuring unit from Manuel Ortiz at 451 Pajarito Street, Nogales, Arizona 85621, 602-287-4538, about $1,200, or an EM83 pulse induction unit, about $3,000, from GeoWestern, 433 East Vine Street, Salt Lake City, Utah 84107, ADI 261-2642. You will need treasure verification equipment sooner or later. These supplied instruments are expensive but fairly priced. This equipment is very professional and is not junk. If you can purchase it used, great. Of course you could consider hiring someone to do this for you. But, I don't know if you can trust anyone else on your site. I know one time I blew $3,000 for a GPR scan to incompetent operators. This put my site at risk too. We almost ruined a bulldozer because of it. You're really better off owning your own equipment. This may be your largest expense. But until you handle depth verification, you'll never know what's in the ground. Do not rely on a metal detector, it will only drive you nuts, and for big treasures you'll need more than 2 feet penetration. Terry, you now have something to think about. This will get you going on Nares. Yes, there is equipment that will kill Nares systems. I have kept them secret for now. This equipment is devastation to Nares flowers. If people use Nares equipment wrong, it can affect the quality of the energy that other treasure hunters are working with to succeed. This equipment must be used responsibly, therefore I control it. It's like some guy holding his transmitter key down on a CB radio. No one can use the CB as long as this guy is jerking everyone around. Who needs this? Terry, this was probably too much to bite off at once. The NARES system gives us plenty of energy to observe and study. We must be able to recognize it and interpret it to find out where it is coming from. When we get close to the source, we will have physical evidence to go along with our NARES studies. When all of this evidence is put together in a research file or site physical evidence, our site history becomes well known usually before the first shovel hits the ground after our treasure has been verified. The best equipment in the world will not give us a treasure site. It is NARES that places us at the treasure's location in order for us to use other available equipment for our treasure verification. NARES is the time machine. It opens closed pages in our history and allows us to work on only real caches without feeling we're on a wild goose chase. If a treasure has been recovered in the past, there will be no NARES flower. Natural Earth Rejection Syndrome. Notice that this overall drawing looks like the ripples in the water caused by a pebble being thrown into the water. Notice also that wherever a grid crosses a large circle there is intense energy, causing a small circle of energy that you will flag as you study your site. Each one of your small energy pockets will have exactly the same information as the substance or cache that caused this problem in the first place. These small circles will have 4 grids and you will get 8 crosses as you walk around this spot with your rods. Flag this area and with your detector, work this spot. Blast it good with your metal detector. Just lay the metal detector down on top of this spot for 5 minutes. If this doesn't move the charge, use a garden pick and pulverize the spot. The charge should move in 10 minutes or so. With a mineral rod locate the next spot and so on, until this flower pattern or NARES signature is recognizable on your plotted 7.5-minute USGS map or your accurately hand-drawn map. You will find at your cache position that the charge just won't move. In this man-made environmental pollution, your pocket compass will shift 17 to 170 degrees depending on where you are standing. Your compass averages 2 magnetic sources. True magnetic north in the NARES system's polarity. This environment will make a ferrous magnetometer useless on this site. Metal detectors will fire falsely on magnetism fluctuations when no metal is present. A NARES site is a saturated magnetic field. If you have a mineral rod or an MFD, you will find very swiftly that these instruments fire on the strongest magnetic charge, at the frequency band that they are set to read. Is this wrong? Not at all, because you have told these units to give you a position on the gold band, 3.2 to 9.1 kHz. This they have done. So what's the problem? You wanted gold but the units gave you 4.2 kHz. Ah, that's the problem, isn't it? These units don't know the difference between 4.2 kHz and gold, do they? No, they don't. People pay $3,500 for them. Isn't life weird? You're staring at the real problem in the eye, except you can't see it, hear it, feel it, taste it nor hear it. This is the real field problem with instruments within a NARES environment. This is why a test facility is not a fair test of the ability of electronic equipment. Pin this on the outhouse wall.